Hey gang, so today's kind of a fun one. This falls into what I consider the micro slider categories. This is the Metal Toys DZ TopF. I had no idea how small this thing was until I got it. I mean, this thing, it's smaller than my thumb. My thumb is actually, can you see that on the camera? Trust me, my thumb is wider than this. Look at this. I had no idea how small this thing was. It's pretty tiny, but it packs kind of a fun punch. I'll tell you what's not fun though, taking it apart and putting it back together. Not fun at all. So stick around and find out why. It's the TopF. Let's go. Okay, so here is the TopF. Now, when I first got this, again, I had no idea how small these things were. Again, we'll use, here's a Magnus Toad X to compare. We've also got a little candy slider, Gamer Boy. So you can see this is, again, this falls into the category of like micro fidgets. This is absolutely a little micro fidget. What I was surprised about is how much I like it. When I first got it, I thought, oh man, I just made a bad trade because I traded something else for this, something much larger, another slider. And I thought, well, I don't have anywhere near the sort of the fun that I had with that one that I'm gonna have with this one. I mean, I know that grammatically that sounds weird, but you know what I mean. The other one seemed more fun because it was bigger. How about that? Blech. So this is tiny, like really, really tiny. Because of that, it's tricky to do this, right? You don't really, you see how I'm trying to manipulate it? It's not the same way you would actually move, like, for example, a regular slider where you have it gripped in your fingers and you push it up with your thumb. The reason being, it is really, really hard to kind of wedge into your fingers and push up and down. What I find you have to do is really just do like a pinch slide. Now, surprisingly, the pinch slide is really satisfying. And so, one, the sound is great. Manipulating it is actually fun. But the other thing is this little extra plate here gives a tiny bit of haptic feedback when you're sliding, because the ball, if you can see in here, and we'll open this up in a second, and let me tell you, that's its own little treat. There is a ball in the middle of this side that pushes into this little track. So every time it vibrates along the track, you get that extra little sensation in your finger. So that's something unique. I haven't felt that in another fidget, and just in terms of how it gives you the, you know, obviously you can feel the feedback in general, but then there's this really focused little feedback inside here with this extra little vibration. So that's actually pretty cool. Now, this has to be one of the most kind of frustrating fidgets to open up and to put back together until you figure out how to do it. And it took me a while to figure out how to do it without wanting to throw it in the garbage. And I'll probably even mess it up on camera here because I took it apart a while ago just so that I could get familiar with it. And I think I remember. We'll find out together. Now here, this has to be the only fidget I have ever seen that you open with a pin. Little safety pin. There is a reason for that. This is literally one of the only things small enough to fit inside the space that you need to open this up with. So let's look at this. Now, the way the safety pin works and the reason the safety pin is needed is because there are balls in here, okay? The problem is, or I shouldn't say the problem, but the weirdest thing with this is the balls are recessed into holes in the middle of this groove on both sides, as you'll see when we take this out. Now, the issue is you need the pin to slide into the groove to basically make these balls push back into the hole because they're on springs. And once you do that, it pushes the balls back just enough that you can then lift the lid off. See how I did that? Now, you have to be careful. Just open it up a tiny bit like that. And then put it down and lift. Now, the reason you have to be careful is because this inner plate here, as you lift this off, we're gonna see we've got everything, kind of a mess. So let's take this apart. Let's look at these balls here. I'm gonna get my tools. Okay, I've also brought out just this little cloths so that we can see these balls because they're very, very small. So I'm gonna put them on here. We got 1, 2. Now, we've got 2 more here, and this one is stuck inside the track. Now, the reason this is such a difficult fidget to work with is because the balls actually kind of get stuck in this track. So when you pull it out, you have to be really careful because they will fly out of the groove. So here we have our 4 springs, and the springs sit inside these tracks. Okay, we've got these tiny little holes and the springs sit inside the tracks. The balls sit inside these holes, sort of. And that's what prevents this whole slider from falling out. So if we look at these balls, now I'm gonna keep these in here. Well, should I? Let's maybe open it up. All right, so we've got balls here, and we've got 2 springs inside the holes. So what happens is the balls sit inside these springs, and then they run along the track. So with the balls inside, you can see that these tracks kind of come to an end here. So what that allows the slider to do is I shouldn't say allow, it prevents it from sliding off because the balls kind of keep it in check. Without the balls, you could just pop this right off when it's in the middle. So the balls are kind of what, when you snap this down, the balls kind of recess in a little bit and then they pop back out. So it just sort of locks this whole thing together. Get back here. Now this is tricky too because it's in Zerk, it's a little slippery. Oh, it looks like we lost a couple of the springs. These springs are really, really challenging to keep track of. Okay, so here's a quick tip, which is probably not much of a tip, but really more of a common sense thing. Don't open this fidget when you're against a dark background because the components are just really, really hard to see. So let's empty everything out here. What do we have? We have 1, 2, 3. We have 1 spring still inside here. So let me just get that out. So we're sort of starting from scratch. Okay, so we have 4 little springs. We have 4 little balls, and so these are for our tracks. Then we have these 2 larger balls, and they are for our the center. These fall into our center holes. So you can already see how finicky, how tricky and difficult, and how much of a pain this is to work with when you've opened it up. So let's look at the pieces. We'll put them back together, and this is the easiest way that I have found to reassemble. So we have our springs, we have the balls. Now again, these are conical springs, so you can flip them over if you want to increase or decrease the intensity of the clicks. I like where this one sits. This one, the conical spring on here has the narrow piece at the top of the ball, so you get a bit more push. Okay. So now let us very carefully, and by us, me, do this while I cannot look at it close up. Okay, so I have 2 springs in there. And then we're going to put our other 2 springs on the other side. Now I stress this all the time, using the right tools for the job makes your life so much easier. This calls for a bit more of a middle ground tweezer. So this one has a slightly thicker end or a wider end than my needle, kind of my needle nose ones here. So let's try that. Now I'm going to be very careful. I also don't want to put too much pressure on the balls while I'm picking them up. So that's why when I do these, I'm oh, look at that. I am very careful to not apply too much pressure. Now, I don't think I need to tell you, after seeing how tricky and annoying this thing is, don't take it apart. Don't take it apart if you don't have to. I'm taking it apart because I feel like that's my job, to show you guys how these things come apart. And when I saw Ashley, and I'll put her video up here, when I saw Ashley take this apart, it exploded and went flying. And that made me so nervous to take it apart that then I realized, okay, I kind of have to take this apart. So we have the ball, or we have our little balls in place, and we have this ball right here. So what do we do at this point? Well, you see, the minute we do that, it knocked our little balls out. I'll tell you, this is one of those fidgets that once you get it apart, I will never, or sorry, once I get it back together, I will never take it apart again unless there's a problem. So see how this ball just keeps pushing out, and it's because I have to set the spring in better. Okay. I am kind of close to losing it mentally. Okay. Okay, so once we get this little guy there, sometimes it's just easy to grab it with your nail and to just slide it in. Okay, here is the trick. Here is how we do this. Now, normally, a lot of people would want to take this and flip it really quickly and try to lay it on top, because you have to. See, you have the tracks here, right? And the tracks are where these balls sit. But because there's a lip here, see, like there's this little kind of trench that it runs along. So you have like this edge, right, on both sides. These balls have to push into their springs to then fit inside the track. And then the springs push the balls out, and the pressure, it's like a pressure fit thing, and then it prevents the top from flying off. The trick is how, see how easily these balls fly out? How do you get this on top of there? Well, you actually have to do it, I've found at least, in reverse. So you don't take this and flip it over right away. You have to actually take these balls and line them up, which feels crazy and dangerous. But as long as you find your middle and you line the holes up with these holes, should be okay. Now the springs are pretty good at staying in. So once you line all this up and we go, okay, I think we're good. Does that look good? That looks pretty good. Oh, except for this little guy. You get back here. I'm telling you, this is not a fun one to open up. Sometimes these are great, these are fun, these are easy. This is not one of those things. So once you're close, I think we're pretty good there. Then now what I do sometimes is I turn it over to test to see if my springs are going to fall out. So they're not coming out. So now I should be able to just turn it over and gently push down. And that's it. And it's back together. So that is the putting it back together is not the problem. The problem is you saw how difficult it was to work with these microscopically small balls and springs. They're just, it's so easy to lose them, to have this fly all over the place, and then you just lose all your pieces. Thankfully, these ship with plenty of spare parts. At least the one I got had a whole bunch of them. So without that, this would be a big mess. So you get a bag full of, like this actually came with like 2 bags full of balls and springs and slide tape. And again, there is slide tape right here on both sides, that little piece. I'm not sure if it needs it or not, but it's on there, so I left it on. So again, once it's on here, it's a great little piece. It's really nice to hold and feels really fun if you're into this kind of like, it's like a finger slider, right? Then you're fine. But just be warned, if you take this apart, the potential to lose things is huge. So just be really, really careful when you're taking this apart. Don't use a dark background like I did because I'm dumb. Use like a white cloth or something so that the balls get stuck in the cloth and that they're easy to identify. It's actually the springs are the hardest part to see. In fact, I've lost 2 springs already in this video. So that's it, gang. Thanks for watching. This is the Metal Toys TopF.